Hi, class. We are back for World Literature B, and we're going to be reading Brave New World Chapter 3 today. And I have to tell you that it's been very hard for me to figure out how to present Chapter 3 to you because it is the hardest chapter in the entire book. So for Brave New World, as you know, the book, open up your book to page 30 for Chapter 3. And I do want to talk to you about it before we get started on reading. So the reason why Chapter 3 is so difficult is because it jumps between scenes. So it starts off with the tour group that's following the DHC, so the kind of head guy here, and the director of this hatchery center and conditioning center. And he is taking these students around and telling them about how they create human beings, how they condition the human beings, and it helps the reader understand more about how the society works. And now, so we're going to continue to learn about the society through this tour. But the thing that is hard is it's going to jump back and forth between these different characters. So before I start reading, I want to introduce you to these characters. So one of the characters who we've actually already met is Henry Foster. He is the one that in chapter 1, the DHC asked Henry Foster a question, and Henry Foster did such a good job answering the question that he asked for basically Henry Foster to continue the tour and to help him lead the tour around the hatchery center. Henry Foster, we learn, is dating Lenina. He's been dating her for 4 months. And then we do know he's large, he's strong, he's handsome, and he's kind of like a perfect man in that society. So if you could guess of what they would like put in a dictionary as this is the perfect man in our society, then that would be Henry Foster. So Henry Foster is dating this woman named Lenina. And Lenina, we did also meet in chapter 1. She works in the embryo store. She's been dating Henry Foster for 4 months, and she's uncommonly pretty. Now, her friend, Fanny, and they both happen to have the same last name, but they're not officially like sisters or anything. They just have the same last name. Fanny, her friend, and we know Fanny is 19 years old, and I'm guessing Lenina is about the same age. But she tells Lenina, she's like, I can't believe you've only been dating Henry Foster for 4 months. You need to be dating other people. People are going to start wondering why you're just dating him. Because in this world state, it was considered weird to just be with one person. Instead, they were with multiple different people. And Fanny, she is kind of also an example of like a perfect woman in this world state. And she tells Lenina, hey, I've been kind of depressed lately. So my doctor told me to take a pregnancy substitute. So what that is it's a whole bunch of drugs that she has to take and inject in herself to make it feel like she's pregnant. And apparently making it feel like she's pregnant will help her not be so gloomy. She never actually has a child because people don't have children, but for some reason they need to have a pregnancy substitute. So then we also meet Bernard Marx. Bernard Marx, if you could have any opposite or foil, that would be Henry Foster. Henry Foster is dating Lenina casually, is dating other people. He's perfect version of a man in that society. And Bernard Marx is just weird. He's different. In a society where everyone is the same and sameness is like a good thing, Bernard is weird and it's not good. He works in the psychology bureau. He asks Lenina on a date to visit a savage reservation, and we learn really quickly that he has a big crush on Lenina. And he wants Lenina not to just be casual with him. He wants Lenina to want a real relationship with him. And then we also learn that he's an alpha plus. That means he's like at the top of the intellectual level. He's a specialist on hypnopedia, and he's short for his caste, and he's thin. So people call him ugly, considered ugly. And I'm just writing all this down for notes to help me teach you about these different characters. You can write all these notes down too. That would be awesome, but you don't have to. Bernard Marx, there's a lot we learn about him, so I wrote on the back too. He has a bad reputation for being different, and people have spread rumors that alcohol got into his blood circuit, and that's why he's shorter, that's why he's kind of different and weird. And he is one of the characters who does not like taking soma. We are going to learn more about soma, but in the world state, soma is a drug that all of the people are encouraged to take to keep them complacent, to keep them happy, to keep their mood even. And Bernard, though, he doesn't mind having moods. He likes having moods, and people think that's really weird, in the fact that he doesn't like taking soma. So what makes this book interesting is learning about the world state through Bernard Marx's eyes, because he's so different from everyone else. Once we get past chapter 3, the story is going to focus more on Bernard Marx and Lenina. And these are going to be kind of the main characters that are going to be in focus. These are kind of more secondary characters. After chapter 3, the reading becomes so much easier. Okay, so I'm not going to read anything but chapter 3 to you. And I'm going to try not to stop too much, because it does take me a really long time to read it when I stop it. It is my second video. And the first one, I didn't even get halfway through and it already took 35 minutes. So I was like, I need to speed this up. So please turn your books to page 30. We're going to start on at the beginning of chapter 3. So this part is still the tour, where all the kids are walking around with the DHC and learning about, how things work in the conditioning hatchery center. Outside in the garden, it was playtime. Naked in the warm June sunshine, 600 or 700 little boys and girls were running with shrill yells over the lawns, or playing ball games, or squatting silently in 2s and 3s among the flowering shrubs. The roses were in bloom. 2 nightingales soliloquized in the boxage. A cuckoo was just going out of tune among the lime trees. The air was drowsy with the murmur of bees and helicopters. You'll learn helicopters is the main way to get around. The director and his students stood for a short time watching a game of centrifugal bumble puppy. 20 children were grouped in a circle around a chrome steel tower. A ball thrown up so as to land on the platform at the top of the tower rolled down into the interior, fell on a rapidly revolving disc, was hurled through one or other of the numerous apertures pierced in the cylindrical casing, and had to be caught. So basically, it's a really complicated way of just having a device throw a ball so that the kids can catch it. This is your first question in the packet. I realize that if I stop and answer all these questions for you, this video is going to be 3 hours long. So this is your first question here. I should put question 11. So you will want to go back or just pause right now and answer this question. but I'll try to do that as much as I can, tell you where the answers are, but I'm not going to write down the answers for you because it just takes too long. All right. Strange, mused the director as they turned away. Strange to think that even in our Ford's day, most games were played without more apparatus than a ball or two, and a few sticks, and perhaps a bit of netting. Imagine the folly of allowing people to play elaborate games which do nothing whatever to increase consumption. It's madness. Nowadays, the controllers won't approve of any new game unless it can be shown that it requires at least as much apparatus as the most complicated of existing games. He interrupted himself. So they play games to get the citizens of the world state to buy things. That's why they have so much apparatus, why they have so much stuff that you have to buy to play this game. It's not just like, here's a ball, go kick it around. So this is the second half of question 11. That's a charming little group, he said, pointing. In a little grassy bay between tall clumps of Mediterranean heather, two children, a little boy of about 7 and a little girl who might have been a year older, were playing, very gravely and with all the focused attention of scientists intent on a labor of discovery, a rudimentary sexual game. Charming, charming, the DHC repeated sentimentally. Charming, the boys politely agreed, but their smile was rather patronizing. They had put aside similar childish amusements too recently to be able to watch them now without a touch of contempt. Charming? But it was just a pair of kids fooling around, that was all, just kids. I always think, the director was continuing in the same rather maudlin tone, when he was interrupted by a loud boo-hooing, so a kid crying. From a neighboring shrubbery emerged a nurse, leading by the hand a small boy, who howled as he went. An anxious-looking little girl trotted at her heels. What's the matter? Asked the director. The nurse shrugged her shoulders. Nothing much, she answered. It's just that this little boy seems rather reluctant to join in the ordinary erotic play. I noticed it once or twice before, and now again today. He started yelling just now. Honestly, put in the anxious-looking little girl, I didn't mean to hurt him or anything. Honestly. Of course you didn't, dear, said the nurse reassuringly. And so, she went on, turning back to the director, I'm taking him in to see the assistant superintendent of psychology, just to see if anything's at all abnormal. Quite right, said the director. Take him in. You stay here, little girl, he added as the nurse moved away with her still howling charge. What's your name? Polly Trotsky. And a very good name, too, said the director. Run away now and see if you can find some other little boy to play with. The child scampered off into the bushes and was lost to sight. Exquisite little creature, said the director, looking after her, then turning to his students. What am I going to tell you now? He said. What I'm going to tell you now, he said, may sound incredible, but then, when you're not accustomed to history, most facts about the past do sound incredible. He let out the amazing truth. For a long period before the time of our Ford, and even for some generations afterwards, erotic play between children had been regarded as abnormal. There was a roar of laughter. Not only abnormal, actually immoral. No, and therefore had been rigorously suppressed. Okay, so you're probably wondering, like, are they really talking about erotic play with children? What are you talking about, Mrs. Ford? Well, remember how this is a dystopian future, and the author is exploring what could happen if we took the model of this assembly line of cars and we turned that and applied it to people. And so if we created people in a lab, in test tubes, then we no longer need to be monogamous. We no longer need to just have two people who are parents to one child or two children, because the people are no longer making the children. The state is making the children. So you don't need moms, you don't need dads, you don't need parents, and you don't need a wife or a husband. All you need is someone to help you fulfill your sexual desires. That this world state sees as a normal urge that people have. And it's not something to hide from. It's just something, it's science. It's just humans have this urge. And this is, kind of like a scandalous idea, but for the people of the world state, it's normal. For us, we're like, ugh, but for them, they're hearing about the way we live and they're like, ew. So you kind of think it's all in the eye of the beholder and what your perspective is on how you see things. A look of astonished is just a hard word for me to say. A look of astonished incredulity appeared on the faces of his listeners. Poor little kids not allowed to amuse themselves? They could not believe it. Even adolescents, the DHC was saying. Even adolescents like yourselves. Not possible. Barring a little surreptitious autoeroticism and homosexuality, absolutely nothing. So this means secretive. So they wouldn't be able to explore themselves or each other unless it was in secret. And so this is just talking about kind of how we live. Nothing? In most cases, till they were over 20 years old. 20 years old? Echoed the students in a chorus of loud disbelief. 20, the director repeated. I told you that you'd find it incredible. But what happened? They asked. What were the results? The results were terrible. A deep, resonant voice broke startlingly into the dialogue. They looked around. On the fringe of the little group stood a stranger, a man of middle height, black-haired, with a hooked nose, full red lips, eyes very piercing and dark. Terrible, he repeated. The DHC had at that moment sat down on one of the steel and rubber benches conveniently scattered through the gardens. But at the sight of the stranger, he sprang to his feet and darted forward, his hand outstretched, smiling with his teeth effusive. Controller, what an unexpected pleasure. Boys, what are you thinking of? This is the controller. This is his Fordship, Mustafa Mond. In the 4,000 rooms of the center, the 4,000 electric clocks simultaneously struck 4. Discarnate voices called from the trumpet mouths. Main day shift off duty. Second day shift take over. Main day shift off. In the lift, on their way up to the changing rooms, Henry Foster and the assistant director of predestination rather pointedly turned their backs on Bernard Marx from the Psychology Bureau, averted themselves from that unsavory reputation. So remember, Bernard Marx had a bad reputation, and Henry Foster, he's like the perfect specimen of a man. The faint hum and rattle of machinery still stirred the crimson air in the embryo store. Shifts might come and go, one lupus-colored face give place to another, majestically, for ever that conveyors crept forward and with their load of future men and women. Lenina Crown walked briskly towards the door. Okay, now we're going to continue with what's happening with the tour. His Fordship, Mustafa Mond? The eyes of the saluting students almost popped out of their heads. Mustafa Mond, the resident controller for Western Europe, one of the 10 world controllers, one of the 10. And he sat down on the bench with the DHC. He was going to stay, yes, and actually talk to them. Straight from the horse's mouth. straight from the mouth of Ford himself. So there's only 10 world controllers in the world. This guy is a big deal. He's like meeting the president of the United States. These people are just like, their minds are blown that Mustafa Mond is actually there talking to them. Two shrimp brown children emerged from a neighboring shrubbery, stared at them for a moment with large, astonished eyes, then returned to their amusements among the leaves. "You all remember," said the controller in his strong, deep voice. "You all remember, I suppose, that beautiful, inspired saying of our Ford's, 'History is bunk.' History," he repeated slowly, "is bunk." He waved his hand, and it was as though with an invisible feather whisk he had brushed away a little dust. And the dust was Harappa, was Ur of the Chaldees, some spider webs, and there was Thebes and Babylon, and Snosis and Messanine, whisk, whisk, and there was Odysseus, there was Job, there was Jupiter and Gautama and Jesus, whisk, and those specks of antique dirt called Athens and Rome, Jerusalem, the Middle Kingdom, all were gone. Whisk, the place where Italy had been and was empty. Whisk the cathedrals. Whisk King Lear and the thoughts of Pascal. Whisk Passion. Whisk Requiem. Whisk Symphony. Whisk. So what's happening here is the Mustafa Mond tells the students that history is not something that's important. So the author, Huxley, is saying that if history is not important, then all of these important historical places and people and books and music is no longer important. So again, he's saying this is dystopian future. This is not a future that I want. We don't want to just whisk away history like it's not important, because the Brave New World only looks to the future. Now we're going to learn a little bit about the feelies. This is actually question 12, and it's a little hard to know exactly what they're talking about, so I'll explain it. So you might want to pause and answer question 12 after we go over this. So what's happening now is there's going to be a switch in scene. So up here we're with Mustafa Mond and the tour group, and after the break we are with Henry and like in the changing room with the boys. "Going to the Feelies this evening, Henry?" inquired the assistant predestinator. "I hear the new one at the Alhambra is first rate. There's a love scene on a bearskin rug. They say it's marvelous. Every hair of the bear reproduced. The most amazing tactual effects." So tactual means like sense of touch. So a feely is like a movie, but all during the movie you can feel the things that you see. So the bearskin rug, you can feel all the little fibers, all the hairs on the bearskin rug. So that's the answer to number 12. And then the second part is, do you think you would like to go? Would you like to watch a movie that you feel everything that you see? Okay, now we're back to the tour group. "And that's why you're taught no history," the controller was saying. "But now the time has come." The DHC looked at him nervously. There were those strange rumors of old forbidden books hidden in a safe in the controller's study. Bibles, poetry, Ford knew what. Mustafa Mond intercepted his anxious glance, and the corners of his red lips twitched ironically. "It's all right, Director," he said in a tone of faint derision. "I won't corrupt them." The DHC was overwhelmed with confusion. So now we're back to the changing room with the boys. "Those who feel themselves despised do well to look despising." The smile on Bernard Marx's face was contemptuous. Every hair on the bear, indeed, I shall make a point of going, said Henry Foster. So Bernard Marx is with Henry Foster and this other guy and overhears them talking, and he's like, ugh, you would want to go to the Feely? Like, how could anyone want to go to that? Like, he's acting disgusted at the idea of going to a Feely. Then we're back with the tour group. Mustafa Mon leaned forward, shook a finger at them. Just try to realize it, he said, and his voice sent a strange thrill quivering along their diaphragms. Try to realize what it was like to have a viviparous mother. So a viviparous mother means someone who gives birth to their children through their womb. Viviparous mother. That smutty word again. But none of them dreamed this time of smiling. Try to imagine what living with one's family meant. They tried, but obviously without the smallest success. And do you know what a home was? They shook their heads. So question number 13 is, why is it smutty to talk about mothers and fathers? So you guys might not know what smut means or smutty, but smutty means talking about something that's obscene. So that smutty word again. So obscene word. And usually it's kind of like talking about things that are embarrassing or extra sexual or something that just seems like scandalous, like you shouldn't talk about it. So why are mothers and fathers scandalous? Why is it obscene to talk about mothers and fathers? Well, remember, they're conditioned not to want to be a mother, not to want to be a father, and not to long for that connection of mother and father. They don't ever know what it's like to have a mother and father, so that idea is like gross to them. Ew, like I'm grown in my mother's belly. Ugh. And then like she pushes me out, and then she like cares for me, and then that's the only person I get to see is my mom. Ew. Because they're so used to the way things are in their society that the idea of having a mom or a dad is disgusting to them. Okay, now we're back to the locker rooms. So there's one locker room with the boys in it, and there's one locker room with the girls in it. So right now we're going to the locker room with the girls, and this is the locker room with Lenina and her friend Fanny, and they're going to be talking. From her dim crimson cellar, oh sorry, first she has to get to the locker room. She's going to go from her job at the where she puts, alcohol or in the babies that are growing, and it's a really dark room and it's only lit with a red light. From her dim crimson cellar, Lenina Crown shot up 17 stories, turned to the right as she stepped out of the lift, walked down a long corridor, and opening the door marked girls' dressing room, plunged into a deafening chaos of arms and bosoms and underclothing. Torrents of hot water were splashing into or gurgling out of 100 baths. Rumbling and hissing, 80 vibro vacuum massage machines were simultaneously kneading and sucking the firm and sunburnt flesh of 80 superb female specimens. Everyone was talking at the top of her voice. A synthetic music machine was warbling out a super cornet solo. "Hello, Fanny," said Lenina, the two young women who had the pegs and locker next to hers. To the young woman who had the pegs and locker room next to hers. Fanny worked in the bottling room, and her surname was also Crown. But as the 2,000 million inhabitants of the planet had only 10,000 names between them, the coincidence was not particularly surprising. Lenina pulled at her zippers, downwards on the jacket, downwards with a double-handed gesture at the two that held trousers, downwards again to loosen her undergarment. Still wearing her shoes and stockings, she walked off toward the bathrooms. Now we're back to the tour group in Mustafa Mond. Home, home. A few small rooms, stiflingly over-inhabited by a man, by a periodically teeming woman, by a rabble of boys and girls of all ages. No air, no space, an under-sterilized prison, darkness, disease, and smells. So that's how the controller describes home. It's pretty disgusting the way he describes it. The controller's evocation was so vivid that one of the boys, more sensitive than the rest, turned pale at the mere description and was on the point of being sick. Now we're back to the women's locker room. Lenina got out of the bath, toweled herself dry, took hold of a long, flexible tube plugged into the wall, presented the nozzle to her breast as though she meant to commit suicide, pressed down the trigger. A blast of warmed air dusted her with the finest talcum powder. 8 different scents in eau de cologne were laid on in little taps over the wash basin. She turned on the third from the left, dabbed herself with Chypre, and, carrying her shoes and stockings in her hand, went out to see if one of the vibro vacuum machines were free. So now we're back at the tour. And home was as squalid psychically as physically. Psychically, it was a rabbit hole, a midden, hot with the frictions of tightly packed life, reeking with emotion. What suffocating intimacies, what dangerous, insane, obscene relationships between the members of the family group. Manically, the mother brooded over her children, brooded over them like a cat over its kittens. But a cat that could talk, a cat that could say, my baby, over and over again. Oh, my baby, oh, at my breast, the little hands, the hunger, and that unspeakable, agonizing pleasure, till at last my baby sleeps with a bubble of white milk at the corner of his mouth. My little baby sleeps. Yes, said Mustafa Mon, nodding his head. You may well shudder. Okay. The next question is, what is Mon's description of family? So that answer is really at the bottom of page 37. I just want to remind you the question number 13 is really over here on page 36. So those are the questions on your homework for this chapter. Okay, now we're back to the female dormitory or female locker room. Who are you going out with tonight? Lenina asked, returning from the vibro vac like a pearl illuminated from within, pinkly glowing. Nobody. Lenina raised her eyebrows in astonishment. I've been feeling rather out of sorts lately, Fanny explained. Dr. Wells advised me to have a pregnancy substitute. But my dear, you're only 19. The first pregnancy substitute isn't compulsory till 21. I know, dear, but some people are better if they begin earlier. Dr. Wells told me that brunettes with wide pelvises like me ought to have their first pregnancy substitute at 17, so I'm really 2 years late, not 2 years early. She opened the door of her locker and pointed to the row of boxes and labeled vials on the upper shelf. Syrup of corpus luteum? Lenina read the names aloud. Ovarian, guaranteed fresh, not to be used after August 1st, AF 632. Mammary gland extract, to be taken 3 times daily, before meals, with little water. Placentine, 5 cc's to be injected intravenously every 3rd day. Ugh, Lenina shuddered. How I loathe intravenols, don't you? Yes, but when they do one good. Fanny was a particularly sensible girl. Now we're back to the tour. R. Ford, or R. Freud, as for some inscrutable reason he chose to call himself whenever he spoke of psychological matters, R. Freud had been the first to reveal the appalling dangers of family life. The world was full of fathers, was therefore full of misery, full of mothers, therefore of every kind of perversion from sadism to chastity, full of brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, full of madness and suicide. And yet, among the savages of Samoa and certain islands off the coast of New Guinea, the tropical sunshine lay like warm honey on the naked bodies of children tumbling promiscuously along the hibiscus blossoms. Home was in any one of 20 palm-thatched houses. In the Trobriand's conception was the work of ancestral ghosts. Nobody had ever heard of a father. Extremes, said the controller, meet, for the good reason that they were made to meet. Okay, so the pregnancy substitute, that is question number 15. So the pregnancy substitute is exactly what you think. It's taken for a woman to feel like they're pregnant, but they never actually get pregnant. So apparently it's supposed to help their mood. And then, okay, the next question is, we don't know yet. So we're going to continue with learning about from the girls' locker room, learning about the pregnancy substitute. Dr. Wells said that a 3-month pregnancy substitute now will make all the difference to my health for the next 3 or 4 years. Well, I hope he's right, said Lenina. But Fanny, do you really mean to say that for the next 3 months you're not supposed to? Oh, no, dear. Only for a week or 2, that's all. I shall spend the evening at the club playing musical bridge. I suppose you're going out? Lenina nodded. With who? Henry Foster. Again? Fanny's kind of rather moon-like face took on an incongruous expression of pained and disapproving astonishment. Do you mean to tell me you're still going out with Henry Foster? Now we're back to the tour. Mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, but there were also husbands, wives, lovers. There were also monogamy and romance. Though you probably don't know what those are, said Mustafa Mond. They shook their heads. Family, monogamy, romance, everywhere, exclusiveness, a narrow channeling of impulse and energy. But everyone belongs to everyone else. But everyone belongs to everyone else, he concluded, citing the Hypnopedic proverb. The students nodded, emphatically agreeing with the statement which upwards of 62,000 repetitions in the dark had made them accept, not merely as true, but as axiomatic, self-evident, utterly indisputable. But after all, Lenina was protesting, it's only about 4 months now since I've been having Henry. Only 4 months. I like that. And what's more, Fanny went on, pointing an accusing finger, there's been nobody else except Henry all that time, has there? Lenina blushed scarlet, but her eyes, the tone of her voice remained defiant. No, there hasn't been anyone else, she answered almost truculently, and I jolly well don't see why there should have been. Oh, she jolly well doesn't see why there should have been, Fanny repeated, as though to an invisible listener behind Lenina's left shoulder. Then, with a sudden change of tone, but seriously, she said, I really do think you ought to be careful. It's such horribly bad form to go on and on like this with one man. At 40 or 35, it wouldn't be so bad, but at your age, Lenina? No, it really won't do. And you know how strongly the DHC objects to anything intense or long drawn. 4 months of Henry Foster without having another man. Why, he'd be furious if he knew. So this is the answer to question 16. Why does Fanny think that it's bad that Lenina has been going out with no one but Henry Foster for 4 months. So the reason why is because they don't believe in monogamy. They don't believe in just seeing one person for a long extended amount of time. Instead, they believe that it's better to be promiscuous, especially when you're young, and to just be with lots of different people, because there's no reason to be with one person, because you're never going to get married and you're never going to have children. Now we're back to the tour. Think of water under pressure in a pipe. They thought of it. I pierce it once, said the controller. What a jet! He pierced it 20 times. There were 20 piddling little fountains. My baby, my baby. Mother, the madness is infectious. My love, my one and only, precious, precious. Mother, monogamy, romance, high spurts the fountain, fierce and foamy the wild jet. The urge has but a single outlet. My love, my baby. No wonder these poor pre-moderns were mad and wicked and miserable. The world didn't allow them to take things easily, didn't allow them to be sane, virtuous, happy. What with mothers and lovers? What with the prohibitions they were not conditioned to obey? What with the temptations and lonely remorses? What with all the diseases and endless isolating pain? What with the uncertainties and the poverty? They were forced to feel strongly, and feeling strongly, and strongly, what was more, in solitude, in hopeless individual isolation. How could they be stable? Now we're back to the ladies' locker room. Of course, there's no need to give him up. Have somebody else from time to time, that's all. He has other girls, doesn't he? Lenina admitted it. Of course he does. Trust Henry Foster to be the perfect gentleman, always correct. And then there's the director to think of. You know what a stickler. Nodding. He patted me on the behind this afternoon, said Lenina. There, you see. Fanny was triumphant. That shows what he stands for. The strictest conventionality. Now we're back to the tour. Stability, said the controller. Stability. No civilization without social stability. No social stability without individual stability. His voice was a trumpet. Listening, they felt larger, warmer. The machine turns, turns, and must keep on turning forever. It is death if it stands still. 1,000 millions scabbled the crust of the earth. The wheels began to turn. In 150 years, there were 2,000 millions. Stop all the wheels. In 150 weeks, there are once more only 1,000 millions. 1,000 men and women have starved to death. Wheels must turn steadily, but cannot turn untended. There must be men to tend them, men as steady as the wheels upon their axles, sane men, obedient men, stable in the contentment. Crying, my baby, my mother, my only love, groaning, my sin, my terrible God, screaming with pain, muttering with fever, bemoaning old age and poverty. How can they tend the wheels? And if they cannot tend the wheels, the corpses of 1,000 men and women would be hard to bury or burn. So what the director is saying here is he's saying that all of this sadness and sorrow and feeling led to starvation. So it sounds like the world became overpopulated and then people starved to death. And that's when they decided that we're going to create this world state where we don't have suffering, we don't have people starving, we have everyone's needs accounted for, but no one's allowed to have any feelings other than neutral. You only have neutral feelings. So how would that feel to only be neutral? You're never super happy, you're never super sad, you're just neutral. I don't know if that'd be the best. Okay. So there's a whole lot more that we're going to read in this chapter, but I do think that this might be a good spot to stop. So I'm going to stop this video and we'll have another video for chapter 3. You'll just need to click on it, and then we'll continue there. Remember, this is the hardest chapter, so stick with it. Keep listening to the videos because the whole entire book will make more sense if you just watch these videos.